What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back on Ringside Mafia here. It's just me again. But we are going to be doing another reaction video, and it's going to be something interesting. It is the original story, well, the true story of the original Summer of Punk back in Ring of Honor. So, CM Punk's our main topic today, and yeah, so we're just going to get right into this. I did fix the audio because I know in like the last couple videos, the audio hasn't been that great. So I ended up fixing it, and now we have it on screen here. So if you guys are ready, we will get into this video. So this should be a good one. This video was made about a year or two ago, but I love looking at like the true story videos and whatnot. So I thought we do something like this. So let's get into it.
The second Summer of Punk shocked the wrestling world. It gave us an all-timer of a match in the careers of both CM Punk and John Cena, and for a while at least, it threatened to be the most groundbreaking WWE storyline of a generation. They do say, though, that sequels almost never live up to the original, which is why today, instead, we're going to be taking a trip back to the mid-2000s to Ring of Honor and to one of the most beloved storylines in the history of indie wrestling. And don't worry if you've only heard of the original Summer of Punk in passing, or maybe even never heard of it at all. I'm going to break down the background, the summer itself, and...
Okay, I'm just making sure it pauses, but let me guess. Let me ask. Do any of you guys think that would consider Ring of Honor still an independent promotion? Because I don't think it is. I think it's one of the big ones now. Thanks, Tony Khan.
The aftermath of what I think is one of the most emotive stories in all of wrestling, both in the realm of kayfabe and outside of it. I'm Jack from Cultaholic, and this is the true story of the original Summer of Punk.
Cultaholic Wrestling is awesome. Shout out to them. I have a giant jug of water right here, by the way, because I think every human should drink at least a gallon of water a day. And I'm also hitting the gym, so I'm trying to get a good diet.
It's almost an understatement to say that CM Punk was a crucial part of Ring of Honor's early history. Having made his wrestling debut in 1999 and impressed in promotions like IWA Mid-South, Punk joined Ring of Honor in its first year of existence, 2002, and had his first match at All-Star Extravaganza that November. Punk joined a roster of just incredible names who would be responsible for not only the rise in popularity of the promotion, but the rise in popularity of American indie wrestling on the whole, and it really took advantage of that weird power vacuum in the years just after the end of the Monday Night Wars. Punk shared a locker room with the likes of Bryan Danielson, Samoa Joe, AJ Styles, and Christopher Daniels.
5 legends in one locker room, dude. Nothing can ever beat that. Where's my cat? My cat's like under my seat right now. Hey, buddy. Here. Before we continue. Come here, kitty. No, come here. Come here. Oh. Here's my cat. His name is Mac. Say hi, Mac. Oh, he's purring. That's the best hi you could really get. But yeah. This is Mac. He is an amazing, really, really nice cat. And I'm glad to have him in the household. So, be free. Alright.
All incredible talents who wrestled a fast-paced, highly technical, hard-hitting style, with an overall sense of realism that really stood in stark contrast to WWE's brand of sports entertainment. CM Punk quickly became as important a part of Ring of Honor's early history as anybody, creating a collection of iconic moments that are still looked back on fondly today. There was, for example, this brutal feud with Raven, which was
This feud was nuts.
To Punk's heelish sense of straight-edge superiority. It included, of course, the dog collar match at Death Before Dishonor 1, a stipulation that will certainly be familiar to newer fans of Punk in AEW. They might also be familiar with his catchphrase of being better than you. Other early highlights around this time include capturing tag team gold alongside fellow Chicago boy Colt Cabana, and also becoming the head trainer at Ring of Honor's wrestling school. But perhaps the most iconic of these early CM Punk moments in Ring of Honor was the 2004 feud with Ring of Honor World Champion Samoa Joe. The pair had an incredible trilogy of matches, the first 2 of which went the distance, and by that I mean they both finished as 60-minute time limit draws. The second one even became the Wrestling Observer's first 5-star rated match in North America since 1997, which was the first ever Hell in a Cell between The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels. In between the first two matches of this trilogy with Joe, Punk underwent a bit of a surprising development at the show Reborn Completion. That's because a 50-year-old Ricky Steamboat was trying to see the good in Punk and allow him to fulfill his potential and try and be a sort of mentor to him, but Punk wasn't really keen on this and instead met him for an unsanctioned brawl. At the end of the segment, however, after Punk had battered Steamboat and given him a pile driver and all kinds of stuff, Punk surprisingly then turned babyface, saving Ricky Steamboat from a beatdown at the hands of the upstart stable Generation Next. Those disrespectful kids. The third match of the trilogy with Joe came around and it saw the champion finally beat CM Punk, and it meant that despite quickly becoming one of the promotion's biggest and most important stars, Punk was still unable to win that title. Moving away from his series with Joe, Punk then spent the first half of 2005 feuding with the heel Jimmy Rave, but
just realized on the subject of CM Punk, check this out. I'm gonna stand up real quick. We're gonna take this on the wall. We now are in possession of this CM Punk. The most recent AEW Unmatched series, the Luminaries edition, CM Punk. So it's his Ring of Honor version of himself, and it comes with a microphone and the yellow trunks, and even the jacket. So who knows? We could probably see this version in the Stop Motion channel in the future. So yeah, I just wanted to show you guys that. We're gonna put him back up here, but then let's continue the video.
Interesting events were also taking place away from Ring of Honor. That May, Punk wrestled a tryout match in WWE, losing to Val Venus on Heat. Hello, ladies.
I remember watching that.
WWE were impressed and offered Punk a deal, which he accepted in June. Sounds good.
We're rewatching
right?
it.
That's all good stuff. Well, there was a bit of an issue back in Ring of Honor because Punk was once again gunning for that Ring of Honor World Championship. And by this point, the belt was held by Austin Aries. And with this being the internet age, Punk's decision to join WWE was no insider secret. The news was quickly out, and Ring of Honor fans knew that he'd be leaving in the near future. So while Punk versus Aries would certainly be a great match, the outcome wasn't really in doubt. A hard-fought loss to Aries would surely be the most logical outcome, and a very nice send-off for one of the promotion's most important figures. In fact, by 2005, thanks to the work of figures like Punk, Ring of Honor was now undisputedly the third biggest promotion in America. It sat behind only WWE and TNA, both of whom benefited from greater star power, greater production values, and TV exposure. And it really just can't be understated how well Ring of Honor had done given its relative limitations, thanks in no small part, of course, to the talent and hard work of CM Punk. So I'm just trying to give a sense of why he was so important in Ring of Honor up to the Summer of Punk itself, and why his farewell was going to be such a sad one, because he'd done so much for a young upstart promotion. The title match with Austin Aries came at Death Before Dishonor 3 in New Jersey on June 18th, 2005. By this point, the secret was just fully out, with fans chanting "Thank you, Punk" and "Please don't go" even before the match got underway. On commentary, Jimmy Bauer, the alter ego of head booker Gabe Sapolsky, explained that if Punk won the title somehow, he'd then vacate it and there'd be a tournament to crown a new champion. Punk and Aries went back and forth in a compelling 30-minute match, which included the champion using Punk's own finisher, the Pepsi Plunge, only for Punk to kick out at 1. Later, Punk hit his own version and pinned Austin Aries clean as a whistle, shockingly winning the Ring of Honor World Championship, despite leaving shortly for WWE. To a rapturous reception, an emotional Punk grabbed the mic and prepared to deliver what would surely be a tearful farewell speech. Except, it wasn't. Yes, we've reached the promo that kicked off the original Summer of Punk. It's a promo that a lot of you probably will have seen, but for those who haven't, let me just say, in my opinion, it stands as one of the most iconic wrestling promos of the 21st century. It's maybe even the iconic wrestling promo in all of indie wrestling. Of course, we know that Punk would go on to have 2 all-time promos in his career, the other one being the famous pipe bomb in 2011, which sparked the second Summer of Punk, with John Cena and Money in the Bank and all that sort of stuff. Back to 2005 though, and this promo was kind of similar to the pipe bomb in one way, which is the central theme of leaving a company with its world championship in your possession, but the tone of the promo was completely different. 2011's speech saw Punk as this rebel. He was rebelling against WWE management, and he was giving a voice, despite being a heel in storyline. Out of storyline, he was giving a voice to the complaints of hardcore wrestling fans, which had, until then, only been confined to message boards and online forums. But this promo in 2005, this one immediately after winning the Ring of Honor World title, is far more sinister. In this one, Punk doesn't believe for a second that he's the hero of this story or that he's doing the right thing, but also, he doesn't care. He begins by telling Aesop's fable of the old man and the snake, but the reveal at the end of the story is that he himself, CM Punk, is the snake, and Ring of Honor and all of its fans are the naive old man that gets bitten. The now infamous line, "You stupid old man, I'm a snake," is the key phrase of this promo. It triggers a quite startling heel turn, and suddenly Punk's just back in full-on heel mode, calling himself the devil that convinced the world he didn't exist. If you're one of the viewers that's never actually seen this promo, but some of these themes and lines sound familiar, then that's probably because they were very deliberately used by MJF earlier this year when he tricked Punk in AEW.
So yeah, this video is about 2 years old.
Beat him down.
Peacock is the exclusive streaming home of Oppenheimer.
And there's ads.
Academy Awards, including.
It was a very
Oppenheimer's a great movie.
And a very meaningful
I love it.
callback, which really underlines the importance of this original "I'm a Snake" promo. So yes, back we go to 2005, where Punk now mocks the fans, mocks the promotion, and even mocks poor Ricky Steamboat for believing that he'd managed to change Punk's ways 1 year prior. Punk then spells out what the fans have all pretty much worked out by this point. He's leaving, he's going to WWE, and he's taking the Ring of Honor World Championship, the crown jewel by this point of American indie wrestling itself, and he's taking it straight to Vince McMahon. If we just take a step back for a second,
imagine if that
straight away
actually
you can
happened,
see
though.
why this is compelling booking and why this led to such a amazing angle. Because
So CM Punk entered ECW with the Ring of Honor title.
Desperately for someone, for anyone, to get that belt back from Punk before he leaves for the big leagues. And as we'll see shortly, it led to a summer of high drama and intense action. Real pro wrestling storytelling at its very best. The show ended with Punk being attacked by Christopher Daniels, whose appearance was a surprise in itself. He'd not been in Ring of Honor for a year and a half. But instead of saving the day, Daniels could only watch in vain as Punk ran away with the belt out of the building. Another parallel deliberately made in future storylines. There will be no last-second title switch here, no heroics from Christopher Daniels, just CM Punk running off into the night with the company's biggest prize, just as he would do years later at Money in the Bank 2011. The next event was Sign of Dishonor on Long Island, and Punk marked the occasion by showing up with a brand new image. His blonde highlights were now a dark purple, but more surprisingly than that, he was wearing a suit. This was a deliberate choice. He was, I think, antagonizing the fans by playing the role of a corporate champion heading off to Titan Towers. There was also new theme music, Cult of Personality, the very same song, of course, that Punk would adopt in 2011 in his first appearance back after running off with the WWE.
Yeah, that part I didn't know. I didn't know Punk used Cult of Personality in Ring of Honor, and that's where he got the inspiration from. But that's cool. That's good to know now. So, yeah, he's just this polarizing wrestler, man. He's something else.
Title for that storyline. So again, the parallels are very apparent between the two summers of Punk. This new suit-wearing Punk opened the show with a now iconic act of villainy, signing his WWE contract on the Ring of Honor title belt itself. Fast forward now to the end of the show, where Punk was kind of scheduled for the main event, but simply refused to defend the championship. Why would he risk losing it before leaving for WWE? Eventually, though, he was provoked into a title defense by none other than Mick Foley. In this storyline, Foley plays the role of like a babyface middleman between Ring of Honor and WWE, trying, either by force or by reason, to get Punk to do the right thing. On this occasion it worked. Foley provoked Punk into accepting a title challenge, but he chose his challenger and he decided to face an up-and-coming Jay Lethal, and he beat him with the Coquina Clutch, obviously the submission finisher of Samoa Joe, who was watching on from ringside. The following night at Ring of Honor's next show, Escape from New York, Punk appeared on the balcony midway through the show and called out Roderick Strong, but only for a non-title match. Again, Foley interjected, appearing behind Punk and threatening to drop him off the balcony if he didn't put that damn belt on the line. Punk did so and won again after a sneaky rope-assisted pinfall. By this point, his actions are just creating increasing desperation in the Ring of Honor locker room. And that became apparent because Punk was then beaten down after this match by not only Foley, but Samoa Joe and James Gibson. You might know James Gibson.
Jamie Noble.
Familiar with Ring of Honor, he was Jamie Noble in WWE. And later on, of course, he'd also go on to be one half of J&J Security and currently still works in
It's so
WWE
awesome
as a
that he was
backstage
put
producer.
into
In fact, now that we've mentioned all
2K24
three, it's time
showcase.
to take a look, I think, at the three likeliest candidates who represented ROH's best hope to take the belt back from CM Punk. Because yes, he might have been beating upstarts like Jay Lethal and the slightly more established Roderick Strong, but they were clearly below him in the pecking order. So who was it that was going to really save the day?
Man, Roderick
I mean,
Strong
the
looks
first man
hella
was
young.
obvious. Samoa Joe, the man who alongside Punk had put on arguably the greatest series of matches in Ring of Honor history, and whose 645-day world title reign still stands at the time of this video's recording as the longest in Ring of Honor history. The second candidate, Christopher Daniels, a man who, like Punk, was very crucial to Ring of Honor in their first couple of years. He was a big heel in those early days, refusing to stick to the Code of Honor, which is Ring of Honor's traditional policy of shaking hands before and after a match. And yes, look, it doesn't sound like a big deal. It doesn't sound like it makes him the most dastardly heel ever or anything, but trust me, it really was, okay? It was at the time. It was actually Punk himself who had sent Daniels out of Ring of Honor in the first place back in early 2004. He'd put the Fallen Angel through a table in a match between their respective stables, the Second City Saints and the Prophecy, and this led to Daniels taking a 16-month hiatus from the promotion. But the reality of the situation was that Daniels had actually left because he was signed to TNA, who had cancelled their talent-sharing agreement with Ring of Honor in the aftermath of the 2004 Rob Feinstein scandal. We don't really need to go into it here in a video that's meant to be celebrating the good side of wrestling, but I guess Google it if you're unaware. Basically, one of the Ring of Honor founders, Rob Feinstein, was alleged to have done some very, very dodgy stuff. And even though he resigned his position with the company, TNA didn't want their guys appearing in Ring of Honor in the aftermath of this scandal, which is quite understandable. But as we saw earlier,
Well, yeah.
Daniels made his return finally to Ring of Honor immediately after Punk's Snake promo, but he was unable to stop him leaving with the belt. With Rob Feinstein's stake in the company now in the hands of Kerry Silkin, the TNA issue was pretty much over, and Daniels was back, a prime candidate to save that title from Punk. And the third candidate was James Gibson, who becomes important right now, so let's jump back into the action. Okay, where were we? Right, Punk has just cheated to retain the title against Roderick Strong and was now being beaten down by James Gibson, Mick Foley, and Samoa Joe. In the aftermath of the beatdown, Gibson covered Punk and Foley counted an imaginary 3, after which Gibson raised the belt. Now, we do need to linger on this for a second because this was maybe the storyline's only misstep, because even though Punk was clearly Ring of Honor's ultimate heel at this point, the fans still didn't like this. In fact, they chanted, "You're not champ, you're not champ," at James Gibson, who then did the right thing and kind of laid the belt back down and instead challenged Punk at the next show. Actually, while we're on the topic of fan reaction, if you watch footage from the original Summer of Punk, you may notice that he's not getting unanimously booed all the time, which you might imagine would be the case given the storyline. But remember, these were mid-2000s Ring of Honor crowds, which is prime smart territory, so quite a few didn't really want to play along with the angle and would rather just cheer Punk for being a great heel. It's actually something that I prefer about Western wrestling these days compared to back then, which is that these days, I think on the whole, live crowds are
MJF
generally
P's
more
sitting
willing to
down,
play
okay.
along rather than show everyone how clever they are. For example, we all know that MJF is a fantastic talent, but he still gets booed out of the building everywhere he goes, except for Long Island. The next event in the Summer of Punk was Fate of an Angel in Connecticut. But the fate of one angel in particular was a bad one that night, as Punk cost Christopher Daniels his match against Matt Hardy, which was even Daniels' first match back since his hiatus from Ring of Honor. In the main event, Gibson got his title shot, but had been injured by Punk earlier on in the night and busted wide open. Gibson battled bravely, like Jay Lethal and Roderick Strong had done before him, and maybe even came the closest out of anyone, but Punk squeezed through with another rope-assisted pinfall. After the match, Daniels gained a measure of revenge for earlier, laying Punk out and stealing the belt itself, the physical belt, claiming that if Punk wanted it back, he'd have to wrestle him for it. What happened at the next show, the Homecoming in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, was an astonishing 60-minute time limit draw. Daniels came the closest of anybody so far, but fell agonizingly short of rescuing the title, hitting Punk with his Angel's Wings finisher and making the cover, only for time to expire. Don't worry, by the way, Christopher Daniels fans, he would eventually win that belt that always seemed to avoid him, but he'd just have to wait another 12 years before beating Adam Cole in 2017.
Damn,
After
dude.
this epic hour-long match, Punk laid out both Daniels and James Gibson with the belt, only for Samoa Joe to send him scurrying away, still the man that Punk could never quite get the better of. This all set up the Summer of Punk's final act, with the champion booked for just 2 more shows before leaving for WWE. To do what he intended and take that belt with him, first he'd have to survive a 4-way elimination match in Dayton, Ohio against those 3 main rivals we've talked about, James Gibson, Christopher Daniels, and Samoa Joe. Then, the following night, in his hometown of Chicago, he'd have a singles match against former tag partner Colt Cabana. The 4-way at Redemption was fought under tag rules, so only 2 men were allowed in the ring at any one time until the eliminations started happening. So the match had a very unique and strategic dynamic. In fact, at times, all 3 of the challengers would kind of work together to try and keep Punk in the ring and wear him down, while the desperate champion tried to tag out and just kind of survive. It was another long one, and 40 minutes in, with no eliminations yet made, Punk blasted Gibson with a chair shot on the outside, busting him wide open. A dazed Gibson was taken to the back, and Joe then choked out and eliminated Daniels with the Coquina clutch, but Punk sneakily knocked his foot off the ropes so the referee didn't see it, and Daniels was eliminated. Once he regained consciousness, a furious Daniels attacked Punk, but accidentally hit Joe with an enziguri, allowing Punk to roll up Joe and finally pin his nemesis to retain the title yet again. Except, and this is where it gets a little bit Hollywood, which isn't usually Ring of Honor's style, but if any storyline deserved a Hollywood crescendo, surely this was it. Out from the curtain, a bloodied James Gibson staggered back to the ring and continued the match. After a very tense back and forth, Gibson reversed the Pepsi plunge into, quite honestly, a terrifying top rope tiger bomb, falling backwards into the middle of the ring. The crowd came unglued as Gibson made the cover, 1, 2, 3, pinning CM Punk to dramatically bring home the Ring of Honor World title. And that was the summer of, well, almost. That was almost the summer of Punk. There's still a little bit left to tell. After the match, Punk was dragged to his feet and shared an embrace with James Gibson, as in what is honestly a wonderful moment, the Ring of Honor crowd just forgave him, chanting "Thank you, Punk" over and over again. But there was still one last show. Named Punk the Final Chapter in his hometown of Chicago, this show saw the beaten former champion take on Colt Cabana in a 2 out of 3 falls match. But what had once been billed as a last desperate chance for Ring of Honor was now an emotional goodbye to its favorite son. Punk entered already in tears, switching the triumphant song, Cult of Personality, for the far more bittersweet song Night Train by New Jersey punk band The Bouncing Souls. And it makes for such a fitting soundtrack if you watch this entrance, as Punk makes his way around ringside, hugging fans goodbye, before getting in the ring and just being absolutely showered in streamers. I think that shot of Punk kneeling in the ring, crying, covered in streamers, is probably my favorite visual of this whole storyline. This match was a less intense affair than those of his title reign. It was more of a technical encounter fought in good spirits with his old tag partner. And Punk did the traditional thing, losing to Cabana on his way out of the company that he'd helped build. Punk was celebrated after the match by the Ring of Honor roster and fans, as he raised a toast to everybody with, fittingly, a champagne glass of Pepsi. And we all know what happened next. There was the stint on the ECW brand, the 2 Money in the Bank wins, the Straight Edge Society, the leader of Nexus. Punk thrived in WWE, as anybody who knew his talent could have predicted, but despite thriving, he still felt underused.
Julie booked their
Well, it depends on how they want to
6
consider it
months before she
underused.
even proposed.
How much
You
longer do we
wanted to
got on
trust
this
your
video
gut.
left?
We were made to help
we
you
don't know.
find the best time to book.
I just booked on Expedia today.
2011 and the Pipe Bomb promo changed everything, but it didn't necessarily change everything for Punk. Yes, it pushed him up a level, it made him a WWE champion and a true main eventer, but he still wasn't really pushed to the level that, in some people's opinion, his popularity maybe deserved. And as for the storyline itself, the second summer of Punk, after such a promising start, slowly became a car crash of a storyline before eventually fizzling out. And
Yeah.
apart from that initial win over John Cena at Money in the Bank, it was nowhere near as successful as the original. Punk was never given that elusive WrestleMania main event that he so coveted, and would of course leave WWE under the most acrimonious of circumstances in 2014. So despite being so fondly remembered, and rightly so, maybe that pipe bomb promo didn't change much for Punk in WWE. But I'm one of those people who, and I'm definitely biased because I'm a huge CM Punk fan, but I'm one of those people who believes that CM Punk himself changed wrestling. The pipe bomb might not have done it for him, but I think it did it for a lot of other people. Without Punk cutting that pipe bomb promo and breaking WWE's glass ceiling, I don't think Daniel Bryan wins at WrestleMania 30, and I don't think WWE then suddenly become interested in pushing fellow former Ring of Honor stars like AJ Styles or even a certain man named Tyler Black. On top of that, I don't think we then see the same hunger for alternatives to WWE that we did in the 2010s. Which
Yeah,
led to the
I
massive
totally
increase
agree.
of Western eyes on the New Japan Pro Wrestling storylines going on at the time, which then led to Chris Jericho's decision to go there and face Kenny Omega, which then led to the breakaway of the Elite. You can kind of see where I'm going here, I think. You could maybe even argue that without CM Punk, there would be no AEW. At least not AEW as we know it. But again, obviously, I should say, I'm very biased in his favor. CM Punk's feud with John Cena got me back into wrestling for the first time since I was a little kid. Without CM Punk, I wouldn't have written this video that I'm reading to you right now. So make up your own minds is what I'm saying here. Despite being a former WWE superstar, I mean even a former WWE champion, for many fans, CM Punk has always been a symbol of this other side of wrestling, the alternatives to WWE. That's why the pipe bomb hit so effectively, because he was voicing a lot of opinions held by that side of wrestling fandom, and his rise to become a figurehead of this alternative all began in Ring of Honor. Punk's departure for WWE in 2005 was an incredible piece of booking, an incredible piece of storytelling, and an incredible piece of wrestling as well. We've just talked about all of that, but also I think I want to mention that it was a very bittersweet moment. This was still a very young man who had helped build something in Ring of Honor and in indie wrestling in general, and was now going off to seek his fortune on a grander stage. And for the longest time, I used to look at this original Summer of Punk as a story with a sad ending. I loved it, of course, but I thought, oh, it doesn't quite satisfy you right at the end, because we knew what happened next. We knew how badly things ended for him in WWE, and we knew that for Punk, it seems like he doesn't feel that he ever found that fortune. Except I was wrong, because somehow that was not the ending. The Summer of Punk, the original Summer of Punk, finally came full circle and finally got the ending it deserved after 16 years, when in his debut AEW promo, Punk directly referenced that final night in Chicago in 2005, in the same city that he left indie wrestling. He was back there now, maybe not indie wrestling because of the scale of AEW, but he'd finally returned to that other side of the business that I was talking about, this alternative side to WWE. And I think it's fair to say that Punk found this other side of the business in a far bigger state than when he walked away from it back then. And a lot of that growth, I believe at least, was started by him, by CM Punk himself. And the fact that it all came full circle in that way, to me, makes the story an amazing one. That was the true story of the original Summer of Punk, a storyline about betrayal, forgiveness, and of course an emotional farewell, and eventually, if you extend it like I just did for the purposes of this video, a big emotional return. Hopefully, for those of you who'd only heard it talked about on Twitter, you've been able to learn a little bit more about the original Summer of Punk, and for those of you who knew about...
That was great. I enjoyed that. I really did. Yeah, if you guys did enjoy that too, please, do your thing, dude. Like and subscribe. Hit that notification button. And, well, we'll see you all in the next one. Thank you for watching.